They call this the most advanced era in human history. Apparently there are medical breakthroughs everywhere, so why are millions of Americans more unhealthy and overweight than they've ever been? According to US board-certified physician and expert nutritionist Dr. Amy Lee, one of the main reasons is 3 harmful foods that are being passed off as health foods all over the country. And wait till you hear this, because these foods can cause weight gain, clog your digestive tract, deplete your energy, and wreck your skin. They're banned in other countries. Yet shockingly, they're still legal in the US. The great news is Dr. Lee will explain how to stop and reverse this damage by simply learning which foods to avoid and how to spot them. And by doing so, you can experience easier weight loss, smooth digestion, and vibrant energy. To find out these 3 fake health foods, go to 3harmfulfoods.com/inspired. That's the number 3, 3harmfulfoods.com/inspired, or click on a link in the description down below.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Because the Lord told me, he said, I am not done with America. Amen. He said, there's going to be a new wave of patriotism. And I saw Trump rising up. And then I saw an attempt on his life. This bullet flew by his ear, and it came so close to his head that it busted his eardrum.
And we all decided, hey, you know, when we hear Trump up there, we're going to walk up through the field, stand by the trees out there under the shade, and watch and listen to the rally, right? We couldn't see him, but we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here, I have no idea, you know. But we noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, you know, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on. You know, we're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. You know, he's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2 or 3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots rang out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%. 100%.
And he was up there for a couple of minutes.
He was up there.
You saw him up there for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. At least 3 to 4 minutes.
And you were telling the police and the Secret Service?
We were telling the police. We were pointing at them for the Secret Service, who were looking at us from the top of the barn. They were looking at us the whole time when we were standing by that tree.
Could they see
binoculars?
Could they see him?
Probably not, because the roof, the way the slope went, he was behind where they could see. But why is there not Secret Service on all of these roofs here? I mean, this is not a big place.
Did you see, obviously everyone, when the shooting started, everyone was very panicked. Did you see what happened to him at all?
Oh yeah, they blew his head off.
Okay, sorry.
Secret Service blew his head off.
Our country, probably 20 million people. And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Get the fuck down, goddammit.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, you see him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals.
He's
we
on
have
the roof. He's
drug dealers. We have people that
right
should not be
here,
here.
right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
He went right on the roof again.
To our country, probably 20 million people. And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Get that son of a bitch.
Let me get my shoes.
What did you see, sir?
I heard the shots. I thought it was firecrackers to begin with. Somebody over there was screaming, he's been shot, he's been shot. So I made my way over. I said, I'm an emergency department physician. Let me help you. The guy had spun around, was jammed between the benches. He had a headshot here. There was lots of blood, and he had brain matter there. And so I got him. There's a helicopter coming in to get him. I got people there really helpful. I got him up on a bench.
Shot that you saw?
Then I did CPR, did chest compressions as well as I breathed for him.
One person.
I was the only one who did it.
We need to evacuate everybody.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being with us again. It is Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. And welcome on X, Rumble, and YouTube. Thank you so much for being with us. We put together some clips that show the event from different perspectives and maybe give a little bit of an overview of what can be known from these clips and from the footage that we have. And we invited our dear friend, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt onto the show today, and he's going to give us a very professional take on things, the latest intel. He's a military strategist that's been deployed to some very dangerous and precarious scenarios and had to pull off operations under very difficult circumstances. He's very well equipped to give us a really good overview. General Holt, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Oh, it's great to return to your show. Thank you for having me. Quite an honor. Oh,
it's always an honor to have you, sir. And General, we just got to tell our audiences, because of contractual obligations with a news network, you can only be here by voice and not by image. That's the reason. So we just wanted to get this out of the way. So General, maybe we start very broad. Can you sort of give us an overview of what you currently know? And then I'm going to ask some specific questions and some hard questions that I think we need to ask. But what do you know right now about what has transpired on Saturday?
So first off, let's celebrate the good news. President Trump is in good shape, and he's since played a round of golf and he's handled his first speech at the RNC, which is just amazing, a testament to his strength and courage. And then the sad news is the loss of life. The firefighter, the brilliant firefighter who protected his family and paid the ultimate price. And we still pray for a critically wounded individual who's fighting for their life. And so what we know is that we have a highly irregular security setup surrounding this rally that was known about for quite some time. And we see the narrative that's trying to be pushed, and it doesn't really match up with even just the cursory things you can go look at, including the very video footage that you just showed. When you have that American who said, I was over there and we screamed at the police, there's a guy with a gun. All you're supposed to be able to say is there's a guy with a gun at a rally like that, and the principal is taken away off stage. Not only that, the principal is taken away off stage with no one able to shoot anything but a person protecting him. So that's what should have happened. That's not what happened. And to get to what happened, you got to go backwards. You got to go backwards to the setup of this thing. So while the last rally, the Northern Virginia rally, well, maybe not Northern Virginia, but it was in Virginia, the Virginia rally, maybe it was Richmond, but that rally that had the regular protocols, the regular tactics, techniques, and procedures around it, a very secure President Trump, no one really concerned, so much law enforcement there from my friend Tony Schaefer told me 3 to 4 jurisdictions. The normal things you would expect. Tony Schaefer was there as a VIP guest of the president, and he said he still had to go through no fewer than 5 different checkpoints. And while that was happening, they were planning for this Butler rally in Pennsylvania. Well, in the planning segments, and I've just full disclosure, I have talked to members of Pennsylvania law enforcement. I've talked to different groups that I follow and track intel analysis with, and folks who are actively investigating this independently right now. And I'm not going to hurt their investigation so I'm probably going to have to keep some things close hold. But what I'll say is that you saw the problem start with the setup. So there's a very special team in Pennsylvania law enforcement called the CERT team. That is SERT, or Special Emergency Response Team. And they're no stranger to Trump rallies. He's done quite a few in Pennsylvania. This is a 25-member elite force, very well trained, most with former military backgrounds, and they understand the executive protection mission. So you would expect that, just like all the other times, this 25-member force would be there integrated with Secret Service, ready to do their job just like they've done in the past. Well, turns out that they were told, we're not going to use you that way this time. This time, there's only going to be 4 of you, not 25, who go to this event, and you're not going to be working with the event inside the event. You're going to be working the motorcade. So you'll be following the motorcade. Furthermore, you're not going to have communications with the Secret Service. You won't be on those channels.
Excuse me to interrupt, General. When was that decided? Like, how close to the event?
I think it was about a week to a little bit more than
so
that.
It wasn't last minute. Okay.
No, not last minute.
Okay.
So another problem. You would imagine that law enforcement would have drones up all over the place looking at everybody. Nope, canceled out of DC. That requirement's no longer present. In Kimberly Cheadle, the director of the Secret Service's own words, she said she had put in a lot of temporary agents. You know, they had a competing event with First Lady Biden's Pittsburgh campaign stop. And so she said they were very, very thin on manpower. So she didn't seek any other resources, and yet they pared back the most elite team that Pennsylvania had. Okay, so there we have it. County, city police involved, not a lot of them. And then we have to look at the setup of the grounds. So you don't just show up to a rally event as law enforcement and go, well, here we go. This is what we got. You go there days in advance. We call it an advon team or an advanced team. The team reviews the buildings. The team looks at who owns the buildings. The team investigates everything around that aspect. Where would a shooter be? How would they get it done? What would be the plausible red team scenarios?
And roofs are that is the place.
That's the high ground. You never yield the high ground in any executive protection situation. And so then you have to put manpower up on all of those points, and you have to surveil those points to make sure that no shooting lane exists. And yet we have a completely uncovered roof, only 125 yards from the dais, which I'm going to tell you, if you know how to shoot, that's a chip shot.
That's a warm up round on a range.
It is
that distance for an amateur. Well,
then we can get into a little bit more. So we position the flag behind the dais. Well, what does that tell a shooter? That tells a shooter wind direction and speed. So now you know how to correct for windage on your 5.56 suppressed weapon. That if you've got any kind of optic on it at all, you'll understand that you're looking at a 5 mile per hour drift. And that's going to essentially equate to about a 1/2 inch of correction. So that's what we see in the malfeasance. Now let's get to the so-called shooter. Isn't it convenient that we have a disturbed young man who hails from 2 Republican parents where he seemingly took away his father's AR, and that at some point in his life he had been an enthusiast on rifles at school. He didn't make the rifle team, which in Pennsylvania I understand is a tall order. But what a nice narrative! And he's a disgruntled youth, and now he's going to find his way to this building with a backpack, get on top of the roof with shorts on a 90-degree day. You can only imagine what the temperature of the metal skin of that building was. And he's going to lay down and take those shots while everybody is screaming, "There's the guy, there's the guy." How convenient. So let's look at what the narrative is supposed to be. On Monday morning, the narrative is supposed to be, we have a dead President Trump. We have a lone wolf, disgruntled youth, which reinforces the message that gun control finally needs to come. And we have a problematic Secret Service where we're going to investigate what happened here and look for lessons learned, and what a tragedy. And we'll all press down that. And isn't the timing so terrible and unfortunate for the RNC that now has no candidate, will have to muster something, and all these millions and millions of dollars will be locked up and can't be transferred because they were held by the Trump organization. And how unfortunate. So that's what the narrative was supposed to be. One small problem. President Trump did something that he never does at a rally. He referenced the slide on magnetron and pointed to it, and at the moment he looked away, he got his ear shot to pieces. Wow. And I've seen all the stuff saying God did that. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. But so
you can't argue with the timing. I looked at all the footage, I don't know, God knows how many 100 times, and I was also looking for the human element of this. You know, if you look at that footage, what you want to look for, if you really want to look for a setup, is who's not as surprised as they should be, right? Who can't fake it properly.
I know who you're talking about, and I saw her.
So
and I know people who are looking into her big time right now.
Yeah, so there's a few people that simply weren't there. There's a natural reaction. I don't care how I don't care in how many battlefields you were. You still react to a shot. I mean, in some way. But but the thing with the head was, and the movement was, the idea that this was a setup that involved the Trump team, including him, and that this was choreographed so that the bullet would graze him is so ludicrous. This is I won't even entertain that part.
That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. No. But
that is nuts. But people are saying so, and I gotta ask, because I mean, you know, just to get this out of the way. But people are saying, listen, there was no bullet close to his head. What really happened is he had something in his hand and he pricked his ear, or they put fake blood on it while he was down, and that's what happened.
Yeah, tell that to the wife of the firefighter whose head got shot off.
And do you assume? I assume that the guy that got his unfortunately that died, Corey, man, sorry, his last name slipped my mind. But do you think what happened was that shooter gets the first shot off, the counter sniper shoots shooter while he gets the second shot, third shot off, and those are the ones that went into the crowd? Or what do you think happened there, timing wise?
Well, the information I have indicates that the shooter he had a semi-automatic AR, so he just went in to pull that trigger as many times as he could on where the optic was. If you see the stray that went to hit the firefighter, it's a pretty good movement of that muzzle to move that bullet over to where that injury happened. So you can imagine the assailant is got high adrenaline. They only have one chance at this. They put the optic onto the president. It looked like 3 shots before the president got hit. The problem then goes to the next point that I would make is let's get up and look at those snipers. The counter sniper team that is supposed to, they had this guy. They could see this guy.
And we could watch
them looking at this guy.
Yeah, we saw them have him.
and they don't drop him because they see him. You see a guy with a gun, you drop him. That's the protocol. That's executive protection. I'm sorry, you have a gun, you're not supposed to have it, and I'm going to drop you now.
So there are two things that are supposed to happen in that moment. Immediate order to secure Trump and take him out. Like
tackle
both
the package, get him out of there, and drop the assailant.
Okay.
That's what's supposed to happen. That's not what happened. And then when Trump gets back up, he says, "Let me get my shoes," and he gets back up, and they're shuffling him towards the stage, and he puts up his fist in defiance. Now, we all love that picture because it shows his strength, and that's all wonderful. But that's not what's supposed to happen. He's supposed to stay covered and down until responsibles can get in there, and you're never supposed to see his skin again.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What didn't make sense to me is that at least two people on his detail, so those who were supposed to protect the body, were significantly shorter than him. That's never supposed to happen. How can someone shorter than you cover you?
Prepared for that. One couldn't even find her holster.
That's so ridiculous. That's not even.
It's so ridiculous. It hurts. So what I'm saying is the narrative. Let's go back on what they wanted the narrative to be, or what the narrative could have been on Monday morning. I won't say they wanted because that puts me in a bad place. But a dead president, a crazed lone wolf shooter, and an incompetent temporary set of agents, and lots of lessons to learn. And don't think for 5 seconds they're going to fire Kimberly Cheadle, because protecting President Trump is national security. So not one member since the fall of Afghanistan, the fall of Kabul, of this national security team has been held to account yet. And here we have global wars everywhere. No semblance of diplomacy anywhere. No semblance of strategy anywhere. Millions of fighting age men in our country roaming, imperiling us the second the UN cuts off those bank cards. And so if we think that Kimberly Cheadle is going to be tendering her resignation, she's already defiantly said she hasn't. And more importantly, and this is my big message, she said she's perfectly satisfied that they have the right resources to protect President Trump. Well, now, and I'm writing about this today. I'll get it published tomorrow or the next day, probably.
She must be full of confidence.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If this is the one thing, well, maybe it's a bad day for the Secret Service, and even that's too much. Okay. But it's not. Let's go back. Let's go back to where President Trump and Melania come down the staircase, and they announce that they're going to run for president. From that day on, he gets spied on. His campaign gets infiltrated. He gets investigated. He gets impeached. He gets impeached again. They do everything they can to thwart his governance. They try to mire him in scandals. I'll just say it. There's enough solid evidence out there that the election was absolutely co-opted. Not going to say who, because that's not my place right this second.
That's not even that. I don't even know how we're still debating this. This is.
It's not a debate in my mind at all. So the election gets stolen. Then the Jan 6 thing. Then they try to blame him on Jan 6. Then they start the lawfare. And they have such malfeasance in the jurisdictions in the lawfare, $500 million in fines. Are you kidding me? And all of it's going to get washed right away on the appeal side because of how politically motivated it was, shattering everybody's confidence in the rule of law and knowledge that there is a multi-tiered justice system in this country. So all of these things aimed at him, his family, his followers. MAGA Nation is the traitors, says Joe Biden. MAGA Nation, America First people are the problems. Even though America First followers hail from every ethnicity in our nation, they're all just a bunch of white extremists. So all of that to get to this day, my argument is that the variables in the equation that led to this assassination attempt are very much still present. And if not addressed, I believe there is a potential for this to happen again. So my prescription, and I will write about this, is I believe the Trump campaign and organization needs to engage the government and the Defense Department and say, we have lost confidence in the Secret Service, and due to this event, and we want our protection to come from United States Special Operations Command heretofore until the end of the year, until Inauguration Day, because what we're going to have to find is folks who take their oath very seriously to the Constitution. What we're going to have to find is people who don't prize DEI over the mission, and that was on full display. And then unloading or taking away resources from the campaign, that's all just factual. So my advice, this is all gonna probably go into the annals of controversy and conspiracy talk that goes on for years, because we won't get the full truths. I believe maybe we have a chance in the next administration, if it's a Trump administration. But what has to happen next is facing the reality that our President Trump was made vulnerable on that day and left vulnerable. And so in order to change, you have to change the variables in the equation to make sure that this can't happen again, especially as dangerous as the next 4 months look to us as a nation.
I really appreciate your perspective on this. And there's a few more questions beyond this day that I'd like to ask, but I want to wrap a few important questions up. So, like I said before, you were deployed to some very dangerous situations in your career. Pardon me?
Fun spots.
Fun spots. And you had to run some very, specific operations and keep people safe. And to this day, and we'll talk about this some other time, you're doing this in some ways. So you know something about high risk situations, and you know something about this. So I'm asking you, if this, and it's hard to think of it as anything else but a plot, okay? So, whoever plotted it, but why choose a 20-year-old amateur and not a seasoned professional?
Well, because if it's a seasoned professional, you're going to then start investigating, okay, then who paid for the professional? Who did this? Who did that? If you remember in the early moments right after the event, it immediately came out, oh, it was a Chinese national. That was all over social media. I even got a call from a dear friend who's a Chinese expert that I work with all the time. And he said, hey, what's this stuff about a Chinese national? Okay. That wouldn't happen, because then we would follow the breadcrumbs, and if they followed back to a state actor, that is an act of war. So if you look at the gun control meme, the gun control meme always has a very familiar formula to it. A disgruntled youth, someone who couldn't stand authority, couldn't stand the what was going on in front of them, was on some sort of antidepressant drugs, has some sort of bad story behind them, maybe a broken home, and acted out because guns are so prolific and so available these days. And so it really does fit a meme that no one would question, that people, oh yeah, we've got these crazy kids these days. Yeah, we just saw, Sandy Hook, we saw Nashville, we saw all these terrible things. Why wouldn't it happen here? So I think that that's the most convenient thing for them. And again, I'll let investigators do what investigators do. I want to be very clear with your audience that I am not saying to anybody that this was in any way an orchestrated plot from inside the government. Although I am saying that there are enough variables in position here to have those things investigated, that there needs to be an independent investigator. There's a Federalist article that just came out this morning that says Director Wray and Garland need to recuse themselves from any investigations on this. Well, why would that be? Well, these are the same people who attacked Trump, going after the J6 things, the J6 commissions, and the Mar-a-Lago raid and all of that. Why would the president trust that? So when I look at, you've heard me say this before, John, if you stare at the rearview mirror long enough, you're going to hit something. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's very true. So this could happen again. And what I believe is we've got to get very serious about the protection of President Trump. And I will not say to protect our democracy. I will say to protect our republic, and that's the bigger idea here. And if we're going to have an incompetent, we'll just, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. If we're going to have an incompetent Secret Service, well, then let's go to the pros who don't mess around. And that's what I think needs to happen next. The other stuff, the investigations that follow, whether it's on this side or on the other side of the administration, those things will sort themselves out. But we should understand as a nation, we're in very serious days. And I think we all feel that. We all know that. Anytime President Trump steps up to a microphone, he's taking a risk, and he must take those risks, and he knows it. But then what our country and those who have sworn an oath to the Constitution owe him is the protection. You don't get to decide who the president of the United States is. We the people do. And so he should be protected adequately. And in this case, he clearly was not.
People that watch our show know where I stand. They know how critical I am of what's going on. They know how I see, basically lots of problems with the Trump ticket. And I've said this openly. I don't make I see it the way I see it, but that's totally besides the point. Mm-hmm. There are a few peculiar things that we found, and you've probably seen too. Is one of them is that the shooter appeared in a BlackRock commercial, and you can't possibly you can't
make this up.
No, but you also can't say, oh, this is evidence for anything. But what do you make of it? Just
I just I saw that come up, and it was just so darn peculiar of me. So he had a TV appearance on a BlackRock commercial. Does that mean that he then attracted the attention of someone who might work him over later on? I don't know. It's possible. What I try to do is stay away from things that require a theory. A theory is when you're in the investigative process, and I know people who are working that right now. I've got some dear friends who have bulletin boards up that look like the set of A Beautiful Mind. There's yarn and pictures and maps and all kinds of stuff. And trust me, there are really great people that understand how important it is that these types of events, we can't just stick them in the rearview mirror and never look at them again. Because if we do those things, we just make it more dangerous for us the next time. When we say, all right, well, this is bad. Let's just call it bad and we'll all move on. No. All the variables that were present on this terrible day that cost that poor firefighter his life and our president nearly his life, they're present still. That danger is still present. And what I'm arguing, while very good people investigate this and hang out in the rearview mirror, I'm arguing as a strategist that we have to understand that the risk is still there, and we have to account for it, and we have to solve for it. And that's what should be done now.
In general, there's something that, because you're a strategist and because you're also very intuitive, so you have really both sides very well connected. I know this from our friendship when we talk. And but one thing that's very important, and people forget, it is Tuesday. It's 3 days later. There is not a snowball's chance in hell you can have all the facts together and everything. This takes time and real research and real evidence. And like you say, you can have a theory. That theory can be very plausible. Yeah. And it can still lead to nowhere, because just because something's plausible doesn't make it so. And I think we have to return to, and most people don't know what research is, right? They watch a few clips, they watch a few opinions. Right. It makes sense. And because you can make it make sense if you want to. And all I'm saying is be cautious with this, right? Yeah. Be cautious. It is so easy to spin a narrative. And one thing that stood out to Christine and I was immediately there was a narrative and a bot release on social media. Yep. And I think, like you said, the goal was to have the optimal scenario. It didn't happen. So the number two was, let's call it staged. Let's just go immediately to that scenario. And those bots were deployed, at a speed and intensity I have never seen before.
Right. I think, I used to live by the idiom in my military career. The first report is always wrong. Whatever you're told, don't believe it. So when you see something like this, let a couple hours go by. Watch, pay attention, but understand those are all hooks with worms on them, and you shouldn't be biting off on them. You should sit back and understand that as the smoke clears, you'll start to see elements of the truth, maybe not the whole truth, but you'll start to see elements emerge. And then you can start to understand over days and weeks. And I'll tell you another thing that I didn't like about this whole thing that I think stinks. And this goes to my colleague who went there the very next day on Sunday and walked around and talked to people and walked the grounds. Hey, guess what? No crime scene. Everything was cleaned up. That body was hauled off that roof immediately. No ballistics, no forensics, no labs, no, we're going to study all of this, no walking the fields, no cordoning off everything. It was all.
It was a 9/11, huh?
It's like, it's just a very, very clean environment. I would think, even as a matter of course, let's say I was the Secret Service director, not that I'd ever accept that job, so I want to be very public about that. If I was a Secret Service director, my next inclination would be, well, my team failed, and I got to find out why. And so I'm going to triple the after action efforts here. I'm going to ask the FBI for help. I'm going to get their lab teams down there. I'm going to ask the local police and their crime labs to get out there. And I want everybody going through that field with a microscope. And I want to know everything evidentiary that I can know. I want diagrams of the physics and the ballistics. I want to know what shots came from where. I would want to know all that because as the director of the Secret Service, you don't get the luxury of saying, "Aw, shucks." You have to stare into the eyes of the President of the United States and say, "Here's how this won't happen ever again." And I don't see any of those things happening right now. And to me, that is very, very disturbing. That is unnerving how disturbing that is.
And General, I want to get one more time back to this. I see a lot of comments, and I let's use some common sense.
Sure.
In history, we know there were plenty of false flags. We know this.
Right.
We could just go through them. We know that things have been staged before. Mm-hmm. We all know that. But let's just for a moment think about if this was a staged event. Mm-hmm. Why would you do it in July, months ahead of the election? If you want a staged event in order to emotionalize the public, sway them your way, and keep them there, you do it a freaking week before the election.
You do it in October. You do it the third week of October if you were going to stage anything.
And why? Because people don't have time to rationalize, think about it.
And you want to get their raw emotions going.
But this is your professional opinion. Yeah. If you had to execute isn't that how you would think and go, okay?
But this is why you also would not do something like that. To stage something like that requires so many airtight variables that you have no control of to go completely your way. Meaning you would have to orchestrate, you'd have to have so many people that would never ever tell the truth, swear to be never to be a whistleblower, that they would all be on board, and it would require so many people to do just that. And like I said, before somebody starts throwing a rock and saying, "Oh, it was all staged," really? Well, you go watch the widow talk, who said, "I don't want to be anywhere near President Biden, and I don't want to hear from him because my husband was a Republican, and he wouldn't want me talking to him."
We have actually, I've seen this briefly in a live chat. We have someone who was present there, mm-hmm. who was live at the event. I don't think he said that this was, in his opinion, a staged event. So I'm willing to ask all the questions because I believe that
we should.
Especially being in sort of the alternative media, mm-hmm. that is our job. We got to ask all questions, and I'll keep an open mind in that direction if new evidence appears. Mm-hmm. But right now, from what I see, this is not a theory I would follow. It doesn't mean I would, but it just doesn't seem this way.
Well, so in the presence of brand new information, reasonable and intelligent people will adjust their perspective. That's fine. But with the information that I have and talking to the people that I'm blessed to be connected to and the networks that I have, that's what I have to offer. And I'm so if someone without new information wanted to come to me and say, "Oh no, this was a staged event," I'm going to say, "Oh, I'll wish the best for you." That's what I would say.
General, maybe you can make sense of it. A few weeks back at a rally, Trump said something that stood out to me. I watched that clip, and he said, a warning to our enemies in this 5 months of transition that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mess with us. Don't provoke us. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what that could possibly mean. Of course, we all knew that it's going to be a very hot summer, but what are 5 months of transition? What are we missing? Is the election case that the Supreme Court is still, still due to decide on in some way? What are we looking at for the next few months? Will it be a big surprise? Will we have I feel like we'll have a whole scenario of things still to unfold that's going to be probably very difficult. But what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I don't want to be an alarmist, but I will say that there are things that we can see now that are present that indicate we're in for a pretty rough ride going into this election and then Inauguration Day. If we banter about the word civil war so much, I think they're getting tired. But I would say that if you want to call it a cold civil war, it certainly is that. And so we see, my good friend Michael Yon, he's interviewed some of these illegals coming across the border who are openly telling him, "I can't wait to vote for President Biden." You have
and Michael Yon not being a Trump fan, by the way.
No,
just so
he's not by any stretch of the imagination.
We are a very diverse group of people who are really about the truth, and we see some things differently.
That's it. I was talking with Michael this morning about this exact issue. We were both agreeing there is a lot more to come. And just hitting on election integrity for a second, you've got lots of people in various states. I know Utah is one of them where thousands of ballots are being mailed out to people who didn't ask for them. So you see some of these tracers come across that indicate we're going to see some election nonsense. But then what I worry about is, are we going to see things or calamities come about that might potentially delay the election? Are we going to see, we hear and see and read a lot from the CDC and the FDA about this potential pandemic. We see global wars potentially being provoked. We see the ability for illegals in our nation to wreak havoc. We already see the massive crime wave going across our nation, making it very, very dangerous for Americans. It's so underreported, the rapes and the killings that are happening in our nation. So does this advance to a higher level of risk for us? I'm worried. I'm not going to say that's for sure. I'm going to say that I'm quite worried that it will, and I'm quite worried we're going to see some tougher days before we see some easier days. And then let's not forget about the financial backdrop right behind our heads over us at all times, and that is, everything from the BRICS consortium wanting to go their own digital currency that now Saudi is signing on to. That's a real threat. That's a real threat.
I would say it's more than a threat. I mean, this is the bedrock of the dollar is the petrodollar, the reserve currency status. And those are both being eroded. So I mean,
right. And look at the timing. It's all shaky. So, the best advice I can offer all Americans is pray. You need to pray. You need to recognize your creator, and you need to pray. And that may be offensive to some people, and I absolutely do not care. You need to pray. And,
I agree with you, and you need to recognize your co-creative power in all of this too.
That's right.
So we're not just powerless beings. We have incredible co-creative powers, and I know you recognize that as well in all of us, in all of humanity. So I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle. And we are in a time where we must expect the unexpected on both sides. It can also there can also be miraculous things happening. Let's not count that out. But another word that is important is also to be prepared. And that's something that you do on a regular basis and teach people to do on a regular basis. What are your simple recommendations that people should be ready for, or take precautions and just have on hand?
Absolutely. So before we talk about what to have on hand, it's what you should do with your legs. Go walk your legs out the front door and go to your neighbors and your neighborhood and sit down and have a reasonable talk with them about what would you all do together as a team in an instant where bad things started to happen. and what you probably will discover is that there are quite a few who will tell you, oh, that's a prepper thing. I don't need extra food. I don't need extra water. You know what? They become an immediate liability to you on day 3 of not having those things. So your community is your number one step in pulling together. And then after that, if you want to be helpful to your community, don't show up to the team a liability. Make sure you've covered down for your family. So at least have 3 to 6 months of food stocks that you could use, have some water that you can get access to. I want you to, run little exercises where you go, hey, family, today we have no city water. We won't have it all day. We won't have it all day. So we're all going to pretend that we have no city water, and you're all going to have to suffer like that. And then find out what that really feels and looks like. And then multiply that times a week and see how that is. And then you might recondition how you think about those things. The internet doesn't work. I can't get my 4 and 5G. So is there something else you have to do with that? If not, be prepared to suffer that way. And so what we do is, we'll turn the power off for a day and go, how's that feel? What's that look like? What do I do? Okay, I know what I do. I go out and get a generator, turn it on, plug stuff in. I'm okay. Looks like we're going to be okay with this. But how many days could I go that way? Where's the gas come from? It could well be that in a really bad situation, simply driving to the gas station to get some extra gas could cost you your life. So at least have it so if stuff goes bad, you can stay at home and you can make that choice. And you can always make that choice if you've really, really worked with your community and you've really, really taken care of some immediate needs for 3 to 6 months. Just do that. And I understand the inflation rate today has, you might not be in a position to go, I can't go buy a quarter cow and stick it in a freezer. Fine, go get some rice and beans, do something. But if you think that preppers are crazy and nuts and don't bear considerable watching, well, you're making a mistake. And these are very dangerous times, and you should just go back and reread the news over the last year and go, yeah, these are different times. A lot of people are just terrified of the prospect, and sometimes fear is what keeps them from action. I understand that. I get that. But I will tell you all that you can manage your psychology if you do a little thing every day, just a little thing. Hey, I got a 20-gallon container for some water. Cool. It'll take the edge off. Hey, I bought 50 pounds of rice. Great. I went and got 4 cases of airplane bottles of booze. Now, that's not for you to drink. That's for you to trade and barter with if it turns out that we're in a real pickle on the monetary system. So think creatively about it. There is a set of books, 2 books I really enjoy, and they're written by a friend that I know. He's a former Marine. And it's called the Civil Defense Manual. There's 2 of them, Vol 1 and Vol 2, and it's at civildefensemanual.com. If you read the first 15 pages, you're probably going to want to do that in the morning because they're very scary, but they're very true. And they talk about what life can look like in a Bosnia scenario, which was real in Sarajevo. And to your point, I've flown in there many times when it wasn't such a nice place. So
I've been there actually. I've been to countries while they were at war, and I can just tell you there's nothing. There is no gas. There's no electricity. Everything's very and sometimes over stretches of months.
Yeah, if you have somebody might see that and take yours forcibly. So that's
there's a thing that when you and I, we've thought about this. You've been in this so often. It's totally different. But most everybody, especially in the United States, has never lived through anything like it. And if they're not prepared, have never thought about it, well, then their worst instincts will start to push through when they get really, really hungry, or their kids get really, really hungry. So This is just a reality. We have an excuse killer, and I call it the excuse killer. And that is the mantra: do what you can with what you have where you are.
Right. That's exactly it.
That's all that anybody asks is do what you can with what you have where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Best effort. So if you go to my nonprofit Restore Liberty at restore-liberty.org, we have a program called the County Guardian Program. So you can start in your own county, get your community together and run down a process to try to make your county more resilient in a bad situation. If you want to see an example of one of those, I practice what I preach. And I have a County Guardian chapter here in Northern Idaho, and it's called ksrg.org, or the Kootenai Stability and Resilience Group. Certainly not a militia. We've got committees that go everything from water and food to logistics and communications. And really, instead of our government being overwhelmed, we want to help them be able to confront something that could be overwhelming as grassroots citizens. You can go to those resources and you can check them out. And it might inspire you to start one of those where you're at, or at least in your neighborhood, so that if the unpredictable comes our way, and again, boiling frog, I think if you look at the last 5 years, if I could show somebody what this point in time looks like 5 years ago, they would have said, that's not real. That'll never happen. And it's like, no, that's exactly where we're going. And so do understand that in the great context of history, we are in historical days, and you can't predict what's coming next. But we can say that there are certainly risks present amongst us. Just look at the open border. So what I would say is take this stuff seriously, take care of your family, and here's how you do it.
General, thank you so much for your time, for your assessment, analysis, and your guidance. This is all practical. This is all real life experience. You've been there, done that. And local action beats everything else. You make your neighbor at least an ally, if not a friend, and that changes everything. So thank you for that. Where can people keep up with you, watch you, read from you, learn from you?
So I am a contributor on Newsmax, and you can find me there. I am also a columnist at Newsmax at newsmax.com. It's called The Irascible Disruptor is my page. And I'm on Twitter as _irascible. But I really am blessed and grateful for the microphone and the pen that they give me. And I am very blessed to be on the Inspired channel with you from time to time, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for coming on, General. Always an honor, and we look forward to having you back. I'm sure there will be lots and lots to discuss, but thank you for today. Always great. Have a blessed day, sir. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.
And Inspired Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Listen, right now, you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.